I want to tell a story about dementia. And I have to preface this by saying that the story I'm going to tell is about my mother, and it's not about trashing my mom or relitigating old hurts. The story is about how I've always loved my mother, but I never really liked her. And I never really liked her until dementia took away her worst qualities. So a lot of people, as they develop dementia, their personalities change because the brain is shrinking and parts of it are dying. And a lot of people suffer terribly as the dementia progresses. They'll get frightened, they become violent, combative, overwhelmed, screaming, crying all the time, hostile, impossible to get along with, right? Even otherwise pleasant people just rot. Their brain rots, and they can't be the person they were. And so I'm not going to go into all the difficulties of growing up in my house, being ruled by my mother and my father and the various adults in my life. I'll link to up here, wherever it comes up. I'll talk about my childhood gender dysphoria. But in my adult life, I would, after my parents' divorce, I would visit my mother. And my mother, because she was always had depression, growing up as a kid, she cried a lot and went to confession a lot, and she prayed a lot. I want to mention the prayer is important to her. She every day she took time for prayer, had her Bible out. I still have her Bible as an heirloom. Loved to pray the rosary, compelled us kids to pray the rosary with her, which is really frustrating. I tell you that, especially for a little kid who didn't give a shit, right? I wanted to play outside on a summer day and I had to pray the rosary. But I knew it helped Mom. Mom's faith helped her maybe stay level-headed. Maybe it's the one thing that kept her from just going absolutely bad shit. And even though she was unpleasant to be around, she probably would have been worse if not for her faith in Jesus. And, so her religion is very important to her. But in my adult life, I'd visit her and Mom would still be very depressed and very judgmental, very difficult to endure. I loved my mom, but I didn't like her. I'd visit, have meals, and I'd spend time with her, play cards. My mom liked mystery shows, so occasionally we'd watch like a Matlock or something like that, right? And eventually, my mom started developing dementia and her faculties began to fail. Eventually, she ended up in a nursing home. But unlike a lot of people who become absolutely difficult to interact with, my mom's dementia went the other way. My mother became a lot easier to get along with. All the harshness and the harsh judgment and the things that made her difficult to get along with died slowly. And eventually, what was left of my mother was her sweetness and her love and the joy she took in her children, which I know she always had, but it was always mixed with all the anxieties and all the things that burdened her. But like, I'd go to visit and she'd just like, Stephen, she's so happy to see me. She'd take me around and show me off to all her friends and acquaintances at the nursing home. And she's just so happy that I was there with her. And I'm sure she must have done a similar thing with my sisters. And I got to experience my mother's love unconditionally without all the baggage, which is something I've always wanted. I needed that because the first time ever, I liked my mom. And I did not like the fact that her ability to reason and think was being impaired, okay? I place high value on everyone having the maximum capacity for decision making and awareness and alertness. And for me, because I understand so much about this world and things that are quite depressing and difficult to carry, I'd rather know that and be miserable than be blissfully ignorant, right? But in my mom's case, everything that made her unpleasant got burned away, and what was left is her good part. And she was sweet, and she was filled with gratitude, and she appreciated simple things, and she called me on the phone, and I've saved all my mother's, well, not all, but a big chunk of them. I have like a dozen voicemail messages that I saved on my phone, and I made an MP3 file. And toward the end of her life, as she really started to begin to fail, she was, let's see, well, I'm not going into all the details. I would say that toward the end, I remember going to visit her, and they brought a lunch for her, and she didn't seem very interested in it, which is unusual for mom. Mom liked to eat, and I said, Mom, would you like me to help you eat? So I cut up bits of food. I guess she's starting to lose some of her motor skills or something. It would come and go. Like one minute she didn't want to use her arms, and another thing she was like, hey, I'm going to grab this glass and drink from it, and I'm going to grip this, I'm going to get that, So it would come and go, which happens. And she only ate just a few bites of her lunch, and the head nurse, amazing woman. I think her name's Ketty. And said, you think you should probably get your mom at a hospice, don't you think? I'm like, well, or take her to the hospital. I'm like, well, I don't think mom wants to go to the hospital, but if we need to get into hospice care, okay. I went and talked to my eldest sister, who took the lead in all of mom's care there. She had the most experience dealing with the handicap. She worked with handicapped people for many years. And then, so she was well versed in interacting with the handicap, in the legal nuances of the handicap, and so on and so forth. So that's a huge burden to bear, for sure. I wouldn't know what the fuck to do. I played an auxiliary role, supporting role, 10% to her 90%, that kind of thing. But yeah, we got that rolling, and very quickly my mom was declining. And Jill, shortly before Christmas, I went to visit, and there was a little music concert there. There was like a minister and some people from the local Baptist church playing Christmas carols, and all the elderly folk were there. The people with dementia and so on, and they were listening to the music. And my mom was in and out of consciousness because her brain was failing. One minute she'd be lucid and she could speak, and next minute she'd be breathing really hard, panicky, all the things that go with that, right? I don't want to be gruesome. But I got to feed my mom a vanilla pudding. And I was grateful I was there to feed my mom vanilla pudding. And one minute I said, you want some? And she reminded me of a child, like an infant. I'd give her the food and she'd eat it. And the next minute she'd go, mm-mm. And another time she was just, you want some more? No, I wasn't offended by that. Okay. The brain is failing, and it probably took everything she had to say no. Right. I wasn't offended. And I was very grateful I got to feed my mom vanilla pudding and give her some juice to drink. And the last thing she told me, she loved me. Her words were slurred. And then like a week later, less than a week later, she lost her powers of speech, and then she went unconscious, and she died a few days later. I think she stopped eating and drinking water, and she died like 4 or 5 days later, just before Christmas. And I remember I went there with my sister and her husband, and we sat there with her. You know, it was awkward. I guess it's supposed to be, right? Yeah, it's terrible to see. The best part of my mom was like gone. And I remember my sister had observed that the last thing my mom remembered how to say, she could say the rosary. And so she had a friend there who was Catholic, and they said the rosary together every day. And like I said early in this video, that the one thing that kept my mom going, I think, was her faith in God. And though I don't share her religion, I think it's amazing that the last thing that she knew how to do was try to reach out and touch divinity. It's the one thing that kept her going, you know? All the burden she bore, all her failings, all her, bad qualities. And after her bad qualities burned away, and after even her good qualities started to burn away, she had a moment when she struck one of the orderlies, and she's not a violent person. Just the brain was failing. But she remembered she could pray the rosary. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So in conclusion, we should all be so fortunate to, if we develop dementia, to have it burn away the bad part of us and just leave the good part, because we shouldn't have the bad part. Whatever it is, we're all individually different. My mom, I don't know if Catholics still believe this. They have this. There's a doctrine that used to exist called purgatory. And the idea is that, you're saved by the grace of Jesus Christ, but when you die, your soul still needs purification. So you go through a process, which is abstract, where you learn to let go of your sinful qualities. So you could be in the presence of divinity without, soiling everything or something like that. And so my mom did, in a way, go through purgatory. Dementia was her purgatory. Because all that was left at the end was her sweetness and her gratitude and her love. Unconditional. And the very last things that she held on to was that she wanted to reach out to God. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So may she rest in peace. And may we all be just as fortunate if we have dementia. Thanks for watching.